One of the big games of the week here in week 4, an absolutely loaded week 4, is an SEC West showdown between Alabama and Ole Miss. Now, as Bud and Tom detailed in the Instant Reaction show, 0 questions have been answered about this Alabama offense, specifically the quarterback position. But it is an attention on the defensive side of the ball where Lane Kiffin has decided to, at least drop some. And listen, as context here, who is Lane Kiffin's defensive coordinator right now? Pete Golding, who may have gotten, we'll see about his exit from Alabama staff, but not a lot of coaches willingly leave Alabama staff if Nick Saban is super happy with them and they're happy being there. So this is what Lane Kiffin said. If you're watching right now on youtube.com/cover3, it's on the screen. We've been against Kevin Steele a number of times, worked with him at Alabama and against him at Auburn and LSU. Seems like there's been a change there. I don't know what happened after the Texas game, but our guys watching the TV copy and schematically in the last game, the win against South Florida, certainly seem like T-Rob, cornerbacks coach Travaris Robinson, certainly seems like T-Rob's now calling the defense. We've played him before at South Carolina, so we're preparing accordingly for him calling the defense. He's done a good job too, and they've got really good players.
All right, so this is absolutely Lane trying to mess with Nick Saban.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's fairly obvious that there's some stuff going on staff-wise at Alabama. But I don't know that it's super obvious from watching the film. This is where I'm interested in this. Like, the TV copy for that game was weird because of the lightning delay for Bama USF over the weekend. And they only had 2 camera angles for a while due to, like, cameraman safety. So did they get some kind of, like, look on the sidelines as to whether T-Rob or Steele was calling this thing? Or... and here's where I think it's probably more of an interesting tweak by Lane, because he may have really looked at it and said, okay, you could either see who's actually calling it, which seems unlikely, or you could see different things that they're doing schematically and say that's a T-Rob thing and not a Steele thing, which to me, and I don't know the game as well as Lane does or as well as the guys on Lane's staff does, but to me that seems unlikely too, actually, especially because they played USF. USF runs a carbon copy of the offense that Tennessee runs. You probably don't want to show a whole bunch of different things to Tennessee as far as, here are the new things that we've learned to defend Tennessee's style offense, which, by the way, Lane Kiffin runs a similar type of offense, and you'll see him next week. So I thought Bama kept it extremely vanilla in that football game. Like, why would you show, because the last time you faced this thing, Tennessee absolutely destroyed you. Like, why would you show anything new? I tend to think because Lane coached for Nick and because all these coaches talk, like it's a whole sewing circle thing. I don't think he's wrong, but I don't think he got it from watching Bama's defense. I think he probably got it from talking to people, because I think he's actually right about this. I think that they may have had to simplify some things and let T-Rob communicate to these kids a little better. I think maybe there's a chance that Nick Saban went back to the stuff that brought him comfort, running the ball, good defense with Kevin, who I had back in the day, getting the band back together type stuff. And I don't know how well that worked. I actually didn't think they were that bad against Texas, right? I thought they did a pretty good job and forced Texas to make some high-level throws, and Sark was really in his bag. And Ewers, who had never thrown a deep touchdown pass in his life, went, 6 of 8 on balls over 15 in the air, and including a PI. Like, really good play by Texas. But I think Lane's right, and I think what probably annoys Saban more is that I don't think Lane got it from watching his defense at all. I think Lane got it because people in coaching circles talk.
I mean, I think Alabama's defense looks different because Quinn Ewers was actually able to complete long passes past it, which is something most quarterbacks haven't been able to do. So from that aspect, sure, it looks different. I think you're right. If Lane is correct, then it's not from watching and crushing film. But I also think you hit on something there too, which, I mean, I mentioned this in Slack this morning with Chip in the college football Slack room. Like, if you look at a lot of the underlying metrics and the predictive metrics, a lot of areas, Alabama still looks really good. Like, even if you look at the 17-3 win over USF on Saturday, from a down-to-down success rate standpoint and that kind of stuff, Alabama dominated that game. They just didn't score points, which comes back to what Alabama's real problem is. It is not a schematic change on defense. It is not as who is calling the plays and who is in charge. It is the fact that Alabama has now gone through 3 quarterbacks and none of them have done anything to inspire confidence in the rest of the team. Like there was the report today about the players only meeting where we kind of hashed things out and let out our feelings and blah, blah, blah. They needed to hold that meeting without the QB so they can just complain about them and talk about how they're holding this team back, because that is Alabama's problem right now.
Well, like, did you see Josh Pate's tweet?
Mm-mm.
Jordan, pull that up. No, just the tweet.
Well, while we get it, I totally agree with you, Bud. I don't think, because Kevin Steele's in the booth, you never know who's calling the plays. Like even if you had camera on the sidelines, somebody's signaling them. They have headsets. Like you don't know who's behind the philosophy. Maybe you could tell a little bit schematically, but in no way would you be able to like just say, "Oh, this is a different person calling plays."
So Pate said, I believe Alabama had players disagree with the staff's quarterback decision and give a no-show effort in response.
Was this
That's
on
like a
Sunday night's show? So this was after the USF game?
Yeah.
Last night.
I did think it was weird when Milroe was leading him out of the
And he
tunnel.
also said he thought Milroe was suspended.
Whoa.
That was interesting.
So, I saw that Milroe was like giving him the pump up talk to him in the tunnel. Milroe led the team out. And, I was like, yeah, well, that's interesting considering the biggest storyline heading into this game is how he's not going to start anymore. And then he didn't play at all, right? I mean, it was just Simpson and Buckner.
Simpson and Buckner, and both of them were terrible.
They got a massive problem at quarterback.
Are they going to lose to Ole Miss?
They could, yeah.
I think they go back to Milroe.
So that's what I was going to ask you guys. What do they do now?
But but now we know. Like, could they win the SEC if Georgia somehow like doesn't get its act together, or if LSU stumbles? Maybe. But they can't win a national title with Jalen Milroe. Like, if I get well actually on this, then maybe I'll just quit. But like with the way he passes,
watch out, bud.
Yeah, like we kind of know what their ceiling is now. If that's who they have to go to, that's a problem, guys.
There is a massive problem. I think there's 2 ways to look at this, because I do think Milroe probably took the high road. You saw with Jalen Hurts, the way he was, praised for handling the situation when he got benched. I mean, I think it's very and good for
McElroy
him.
this morning kind of went the other way on this. McElroy said, apparently this is from tweets about McElroy's show. I don't have the actual audio. Milroe didn't handle having to share reps with Simpson and Buckner last week. I assume in practice he means, and that's why he didn't play. McElroy said, when you saw Milroe congratulating them on TV at USF, McElroy said that's not how it went down in practice last week.
So things are great.
I don't want to throw him under the bus, but we did do a show for a while together. There was the same kind of sentiment about Jalen Hurts that a lot of it was public.
Got it. Okay.
But I mean, because I think the coaches,
I
think they're probably feeding them some information too. But I do think I don't know what they do, because if it is like, if you go back to Milroe, who I completely disagree with the decision to bench him before that game. Like, if you didn't like Milroe, why the heck did you roll him out there the first 2 games? Like, if you were that unsure and you I think they didn't. I think you probably have a power dynamic struggle between Tommy Rees and Nick Saban over who is supposed to play. And I think Nick Saban probably that it didn't delineate itself. You couldn't tell who was the guy. Saban's like, we're going to go with the guy that's been here. We're going to go with the veteran. He's mobile. We saw him last year. He can handle the moment. And he looked great against Middle Tennessee. And it was probably like, yeah, that's why we did it. And then against Texas, it was awful. And Tommy Rees is probably like, I can't throw with this guy. Like, what do you want me to do? Let me get my guy a chance. So then he gets the opportunity. And I do think there's probably an issue in the locker room over the new guy versus the guy that's been there and probably does have a better relationship. It is a mess right now for Bama.
Well, if you play receiver at Bama, you're pissed because you went there to catch balls and they don't have anybody who can throw the balls to you.
Among the 3.
Correct. And
because that's the thing, is like Milroe struggles against Texas. Like some of this, as we discussed for a week, should be Texas's defense passing a huge test. And now we look at what happened against USF. I mean, that's a not being able to get it done against USF is staggering.
No doubt.
Well, I'll say this: like it is impossible to throw in that type of weather, and even when even when it kind of goes, everything's still kind of damp, and the balls are heavier. It's just a crazy, uncomfortable feeling for a quarterback. But you know what you do in that situation? If you're Bama, you line up and you cram it down their throat, which they couldn't. That to me is like, what happened to this offensive line that was supposed to be the best OL that we've seen under Nick Saban?
Do you, Danny, like you played quarterback, do you read into like offensive linemen not picking up a quarterback after they get sacked? Like not helping them up?
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely want to be picked
Because that
up
happened a
with
couple times. Like,
Yeah.
Kid got rocked and the O-line, maybe there is stuff there. I don't know. Like this is very speculative, but clearly there's something going on.
I will say
USF's
neither
not
Buckner
good.
or Simpson turned the ball over. So,
Did you guys see the sad video of Saban walking through the tunnel like after the game? Like it was sad. Like he looked worn out. Like they're walking to the locker room through the tunnel, and he just looked. And I would expect it. But he just
Not how he wants to go out.
Hey,
Right.
Bud, I'm joining your team. I
think
heard
he's done.
on the instant reaction show, Bud just threw it out. He said, "Tom, you think this is it for Saban?" And he's starting to say, like, I think this is wrapping it up. I'm starting to believe that this might be it.
I don't see him going out like this, though.
Well, how do you see him going out?
I see him rallying the troops for a transfer quarterback this offseason that will fix a lot of problems and get this team back in contention to win a national title.
We'll see. All right.
I will say he should call Bill Belichick and they can commiserate about how much more difficult it is to win when you no longer have a QB.